Hi everyone, welcome back to the Babbling. It's just myself today, covering the Gent performance of last night, where obviously we got a 1-1 draw in our first leg, taking Gent back to London Stadium in a position where we can hopefully look to take the game to them, and like we did last season in Europa League. But it wasn't a great performance. But we'll get into the game, what went well, what didn't go so well, and yeah, stay tuned. Hi everyone. So yeah, as I say, we drew last night in a rather uninspiring performance. I say performance very loosely because there wasn't many performers on the pitch. It wasn't a great spectacle to watch. I think David Moyes was actually quite honest afterwards that we really kind of failed in the physical aspects of the game. Some of that physical aspects, not just kind of in duels and so on, but actually in just being able to run and move and get around the pitch. It was a bit of a failure in many ways. It was a game for the taking. I believe there were opportunities that look back in the cold light of day. Had we made other decisions, had we made other kind of final ball and so on, we may have had a different result. And by and large, over the course of the game, I think we were probably very lucky to remain 1-1. Again, obviously had quite a number of shots over the course of the game, not many of them necessarily threatening, but they did. It was a big gulf in terms of the attacking intent, the physicality, and also just the sheer level of determination in the game. We were definitely felt lacking over the course of that. But before we get into it, let's kind of first touch on how both teams lined up. So it was kind of a bit of a surprise, although having said that, I did say in our preview that I can very much see us going through a back three, and Moyes wanting to go like for like. He happens to have done this very often. Whenever we've played against the back three, he tries to kind of go like for like. Obviously, the formation here is stating it was a 3-4-2-1. It was more really essentially a direct representation of what Gent had, although Hong does play actually as just behind the strikers, so it's more of a 3-4-1-2 for Gent, and we pretty much replicated it. Again, when you look at the average ages of the squad, you can see again there's a vast difference in age. So again, there's a lot more enthusiasm in their team. There's a lot more energy and a lot more mobility as well in their team in comparison to us, which was in many cases very lethargic, not up to standard, and there were some really disappointing performances in that game for me. And if we look at kind of how we were in terms of average positions, you can see as well how condensed Gent were. We were quite spread wide, but we had really little kind of attacks down that left-hand side, despite the fact that Gent in themselves, on that left, obviously they had Fofana very far forward, obviously against Soufal, which meant that's kind of why we see Ben Johnson quite far to the right-hand side. But down their right, obviously their number 14 was their right wing back. He comes central. Again, played really compact throughout the game, and there were many occasions on that left-hand side where we had an opportunity in which to exploit. The one good thing in this one is that Danny Ings' average position was in a threatening position. It was actually an attack quite close to Bowen, who played in a kind of two, but again was largely ineffective, largely anonymous throughout the entire game. And it was just really disappointing all the way round. Now, we started the game off actually relatively well. We kind of had some opportunities, but they were kind of wasted. We kind of made the wrong choices when we had chances. And it just helped against, I guess, add frustration to those watching at home. I will say that our fans, you could hear them, despite the raucous crowd that was at Gent, you could obviously hear our fans as well, making themselves known, making it clear that they were behind the team. And it just felt like we were lethargic. We wasn't really up for the physical battle. I don't think how we set up defensively actually helped us. They played a lot of times for the second and third ball again. We didn't really do that. They were quite comfortable trying to play through us, and they did that quite regularly. But also they were very much willing to then play for those second balls, so hitting the ball over our midfield, essentially to negate Declan Rice and to remove his kind of importance in the middle, to kind of stop, obviously, them with their progression, and then they will play for those second balls. We consistently see that our defence was kind of woefully ill-prepared, in my opinion, for what came for them. And this is quite a long way into the game, but it's a good example of how we were set up defensively. We had Declan Rice and Downs sitting deep. We had Lanzini would often go into the centre and be the kind of the focal point of our front press. Danny Ings would move to the left, obviously Bowen to the right. So we kind of go 3 for 3 with their centre backs, 2 for 2 in the midfield. But then they would have 5 on our defence, and you would say, as you can see, number 7 in the kind of bottom point of the screen for Gent. Hong was always able to get kind of little pockets of space and kind of find himself in areas where they would then kind of challenge for that second, maybe third ball when they were kind of playing long. But this press was pretty terrible. They were able to play through us quite often. And when we get on to Gent's goal, there are just so many errors and so many lax performances that you really have to question as to, well, what do we even work on? What were players doing? And certain players were getting praised for their performances. Others were getting pulled over hot coals. An example of a player that I saw got praised was Flynn Downs. Didn't really do very much. Pretty ineffective, in my opinion, throughout that game. And as we see when we go through the goal, is a big factor in why they scored their goal as well. And it's when you see it and you actually watch it, it's terrible play from him in that kind of sequence. And just by 1 or 2 players being out of position, we were constantly just easy to play through. Our ability to press was not good. In attack, we just seemed to not really have any cohesion, not really understand maybe where to go, where to be, players not taking a chance. And it was just a game where it was just full of indecision, full of kind of lackluster performances, and often people just jogging around the pitch, just getting in positions just to potentially receive the ball, but actually have no real threat whatsoever. But that being said, if we're going to try and be a bit positive, that we did start the game fairly well. We had a couple of good half chances. Predominantly, our chances came down the right-hand side. And one of those instances, again, I kind of review this as a bit of a wasted chance, but, that's if I want to be negative. I want to be positive. It was good movement. We win the ball, and in transition, we attack them down that side. We get a 2v1 with Bowen and Soufal. Danny Ings is in a position where he's looking to run into that near post area. We've got Lanzini also looking to get into the area. So all in all, it's actually a positive. It's about 6 minutes in. We'll get into this position. And at this stage, you say, actually, this is a very good and threatening position for us. Now, the reason why I call it wasted is because I don't think players are making the right decisions, and I don't think players are necessarily taking or not necessarily taking the chances, but players are not gambling on moments. And we talk about Declan Rice wanting to be an 8. Now, if Declan Rice wants to be a true number 8, this is where Frank Lampard, for instance, one of the best number 8s we'd seen in the Premier League and a player that we also produced, would have probably got a goal, because he would have gambled in this situation. He would have reviewed what was seen, and he would have had more awareness from an offensive point of view. And this is one of the things that if we're talking about Declan Rice as an 8, as many want to see, this is where he has to improve, because if he does this, then it becomes a far better player. The conversation around goals and so on will then go, because he will start scoring more regularity, or at least be in a position in which to influence. And the reason I say this is because as we go through this, when the ball is played, Soufal gets into a good position. Now, both Danny Ings and Lanzini go into exactly the same space. So they both go into that front post area. Now, if Lanzini had actually maybe stopped his run and kind of halted and maybe tried to drop back, he would have been in a position where he potentially could have got a toe onto Soufal's, and it, quite quick, fast-paced kind of ball across. He may have been able to get control, maybe been able to get a toe onto it, maybe been able to kind of push it goalwards. You can see on the very far left, there's this little white mark. That's actually Declan Rice. Now, again, in this situation, players such as Frank Lampard of old would have been busting a gut to get in hit. They would have been sprinting. But in this sequence, simply jogging. Now, Bowen, there's no criticism you can give to Bowen. He does well. There is no time for him in which to be bursting into the space where, say, Lanzini is. There is absolutely no chance. But our midfield had time to get up to pace with this. And also, again, had they been taking the gamble and actually, sprinted into the area, there was always a chance. And when we get to, this frame, obviously you can see Emerson, who did actually try and do it. Declan Rice has to be aiming to be hitting the penalty spot in these situations, because if he's in the position which we highlight, he's probably going to be able to take the ball on with a touch, maybe inside the defender to maybe make contact to kind of get a penalty. Or look where all of those players are. There are 5 defenders for Gent, all essentially in their 6-yard area. He would have the entire penalty area in which to take control of the ball and then pick a spot. And obviously the spot to the left-hand side, or even to take it first time. But because our players do not gamble, they do not take that chance, they're not aware of what can happen offensively, we lose an incredibly good opportunity and a really well-worked chance, because 2 players run into the same area. We have no midfielder either gambling with a late run into the area and hitting that penalty spot. Had someone done that, that could be 1-0. It may have been deflected for a corner or so on. Obviously, ifs, buts, and maybes. But the truth of the matter is, it was a golden opportunity in which to take the lead. And at that point, we were playing fairly well. We looked comfortable in possession, a bit hurried, a bit rushed. But ultimately, based on the game and based on the fact that Gent were up for the game, we looked okay. We're doing pretty well. But again, it's players not anticipating, not showing the desire to sprint beyond their position. And it's just this kind of thing of, we don't take chances. We don't take risks as a team. We're just very much, I need to get onto the edge of the area and be ready for a cutback, as opposed to, I need to get into the area. That kind of really goes against us, and it's kind of counterintuitive, really, because you score goals in the area more than you score outside, but we don't seem to have players willing to get in those areas, or at least kind of create confusion for the opposition by being there, in which to create another person that they need to concentrate on. And another kind of prime example came, again, about 15 minutes in. We win the ball, and the ball comes to Ben Johnson after he first fires it into Bowen, who has to obviously then plays it into Johnson. But it creates this kind of cul-de-sac where we actually managed to get this kind of block. Now, a block midfield is what loads of teams look at trying to do within midfield, because it means you essentially have 2 men in front of the press, 2 men behind the press. Now, at this point, had Johnson played with a bit of a kind of an injection of pace, there was an opportunity to play through Downs, who then also would have had the opportunity to play the ball into Soufal. So we could have been, looking to attack, because Soufal is getting behind Fofana. Downs is obviously behind their midfield, and he would have been in position to either go directly at the centre-back or to play the ball into Soufal. Also, Declan Rice, acres of space. on that left-hand side. Same, you can see Emerson on that far side. You've then got Declan Rice, Lanzini directly in front of him, and Emerson on the far left. In this point, we had a really good opportunity in which to exploit the space, because it's one of the times we actually dragged Gent into a kind of a clustered position. And as we saw in the average positions, they're a very compact team. They like to kind of only hold their width through their fullbacks, but most commonly they will be very compact in their midfield, very compact. And then in this situation, we had an opportunity to do that. Now, I know people now are going to moan and say, oh, Johnson was terrible, he didn't do this. Johnson actually had a very good first half. His duels were very impressive. Aerially, he was fairly strong. Defensively, he was strong. People will say he was terrible, but he won 71% of all of his duels, defensive duels. He also won about 67% of his aerial duels as well, and had about an 80%, I think, pass rate. Where he let himself down was in his long balls and long passing. So Ben Johnson actually had a decent game, especially in that first half, and was pretty good in nullifying their attack. He was no worse or no better than Aged or Bonner, and yet his performance is called out for one or two errors. And also there is a spelling mistake there, obviously, as well against Johnson, but we'll pass over that for now. But obviously in this situation, he doesn't make that pass. Now, what Johnson does do is he's sensible. He holds on possession. He brings it forward. And again, we still draw those players over. So even though he doesn't make that pass, he's still positive. He drives the ball forward. He still brings over those players. And due to that, Lanzini's able to, again, hold his space to receive the ball. And then obviously we have an advantage because we have numerical advantage on that left-hand side. We have a 2v1 against their right wing back because Declan Rice is in acres of space and he's got Emerson with him. Now, once the ball's played, Declan is able to come forward. But again, it's the decisions of our players as to where to go. If we go back to this shot, Flynn Downs is currently standing next to a centre-back. Now, Flynn Downs should be continuing to remain in a position where he can impact that centre-back to give that defender something to think about. Because Bowen's in a fantastic position, but once again, positions of players. No player's taking a gamble. No one's thinking about, well, if I go here, what am I going to create? He's standing essentially in no man's land. You've got Lanzini, who's just managed to get himself up to play, so he can be a short option for Declan Rice. Flynn Downs should be in the position we highlighted. If Flynn Downs is in that position, he draws the attention of the centre-back for Gent. That then also means that Bowen then is going to be completely free at that back post. Because if Downs is in that position, and when Rice cuts in, if Downs is then making a arcing run into the area, he's going to draw the defender, which means it creates more space for Bowen, which means also Declan Rice then has to give less of a lift and has to be less precise with that pass. Now, as a result, Flynn Downs, as we see, is just sitting right in the middle. We only get two players in the box when we should have had three in the box. Sorry, well, it's four because obviously we have Soufal on the other side, but we should have had four because Flynn Downs should be round about that penalty spot, which would be drawing number 23, again, out of position, and essentially giving Bowen a completely clear, free opportunity at goal. But because our players are not aware on an offensive point of view of where to be and where to go, or not taking risks, we're making it more difficult for our strikers to have any kind of space, and we're having to rely on the likes of Declan Rice to play absolutely pin-perfect passes in which to exploit an opportunity. Now, as it happens, the ball is then slightly overhit, and it is only slightly. It goes over Bowen's head, and we lose a fantastic chance. Now, that was just the story of the first half. There were times where we would get the ball, we would get in a good position, but then there was either a lack of movement, a lack of intent, and just indecision then as to what to do with the ball, and an opportunity was lost. Soufal had a number of opportunities getting down that side. He made one very good cutback. Declan Rice wasn't there. That opportunity, again, was well worked, but again, other players not moving for their teammates is then making it even more difficult for us to score. Add to the fact that when we do get in a kind of opportunity, we just seemed unsure, uncertain, unaware of where we should be and how we should attack any kind of space. And Gent were very much organised. They knew where they needed to be as players. Auburn and Kuipers, they moved that defence around brilliantly against us. And Hong was getting in positions where, again, he could get the ball and he was causing us problems. They were a threat at set pieces. They had 2 very good opportunities at set pieces, which we rode our luck. And again, when I say about us being unsure, another prime example where we was unsure, and again, Sufal got, when you look at the Twitter response, he was getting called out for his delivery. Now, his delivery wasn't great, but you can also see the indecision he has and what he actually wants to do when you actually look at what he is reviewing and looking at. And again, players don't react. There is a lack of offensive awareness in our players, or even just the desire to take risks. And this is the example. Now, we get the ball again. So in transition, we win the ball. Sufal's in a really good position. Now, he has multiple passes potentially off to him. Now, Lanzini, again, he first is too slow in his reaction. He's just kind of waiting on the edge of the area rather than trying to take that runner. If he moves into that channel, that inside channel for that undercut run, that draws a defender. That then puts Bowen in a position where he has more space. Again, the lack of running for your teammate is restricting the level and the amount of space that they have. Obviously, Bowen's in a position where he then looks to attack. Obviously, we know the ball was played into there and it misses Bowen, and obviously the goalkeeper's able to take it. But again, Sufal has Emerson on the very far left. He could switch play quickly. Again, we have a numerical advantage because they have Emerson and Declan Rice on that side against their right-sided player. We don't tend to use that. Danny Ings in this situation as well. When you watch it, he's holding his arm out. He's telling Sufal to slow down, to hold the ball, because he wants to get into the area. So he's asking him to just slow down the pace. Throughout this whole sequence, he's constantly looking at Declan Rice because he can see there's a mismatch at the back post. Now, Declan doesn't sprint in this whole entire sequence. He's jogging to the area. And because Lanzini is too slow in making a decision and doesn't make that choice quick enough in which to then go for the undercut run or the underlap run, Sufal was really only left with one option because, again, Declan Rice does not bust a gut to get into the area. A proper number 8 who wants to score is looking to get into the area at that point. Unfortunately, Declan Rice doesn't have that offensive awareness as yet, and he's not clinical enough to kind of make those chances. Still, we're playing this kind of risk-averse kind of process where we don't take those kind of opportunities enough, or we don't kind of push forward. If Declan Rice would have been sprinting into the back post, there is that opportunity for a mismatch in an aerial duel, and he's obviously going to have the pace and going to have the momentum for him to attack that ball against that defender. Now, that's not me saying that Declan Rice was bad or Declan Rice is completely wrong and it's his fault we didn't score. It's nothing to do with that. But it's about the intent and the fact that as a team, we don't seem to have that cohesion in that final third to know what we do in this situation. If we were playing against, say, an Arsenal, at this point, the player who would be in Declan Rice's position would be bursting into the area, would be sprinting to get in there. There were Lanzini. That would be an underlapping pass to draw the centre back away from Bowen. It's all about creating spaces and creating opportunities where you have players who can potentially be at an advantage. And this one just fizzles out because we don't play the ball out to Emerson. Declan Rice doesn't sprint in at that back post where he would have an advantage against their centre back, the right back. Lanzini, lack of underlap, or the slowness of his underlap causes us to, when we eventually play the ball and it goes to the goalkeeper, just to then stand there and point, say, oh, I want you to put it here. But in actual fact, most of that period, he's standing short, asking it into his feet in front of the defence rather than making that running behind. And that's the problem with West Ham at the moment. I find that we constantly asking for the ball in front of the defence. There's not enough people making those bursts or those unselfish runs into positions to drag players out. And it was just, again, another opportunity where you just look at as to, had we made better decisions, had we made quicker decisions, we would have been in a better position in which to score a goal or at least have an effort on goal. And up to about the 25th minute or so, we'd actually gone without a single shot in the game. I think at that point, Gent had at least 5 or 6. It just again shows that the lack of intent and confusion in that final third to really carve out anything of any note. Some of that has to again be a credit to Gent, because Gent in themselves were resolute in defending. They were pretty well organised and they were good kind of physical battles. But when we played with a little injection of pace and we were quicker in transition, we caused them problems, but it was too few and far in between. And the one time we actually had a really good bit of quickness of fault resulted in a goal. And you have to praise Soufal, you have to praise Danny Ings, and obviously definitely Bowen as well. And we'll just we'll kind of break it down as to why those players all need to have some credit. And obviously until that point, Danny Ings was completely anonymous in the game. He was nowhere, really. He wasn't involved in play, was kind of involved in the press, but as I say, our press was ineffective. So up until this point, he'd been a major, major disappointment. But again, we talk about Moyes' goals can be scored in moments. Danny Ings is probably one of those moments type of players. Soufal, Bowen and Ings definitely require a lot of praise in this situation. But if you were Gent, you would be incredibly frustrated as a manager because it's almost embarrassing what happens in this situation. So as you can see in those highlights, we've got Bowen, obviously Soufal and Ings all in their positions. But you've got the two Gent players having a high five. They're congratulating themselves for clearing the ball, not paying any attention. All of the Gent players are completely unaware of what's happening. Soufal's really switched on, calls for the ball very quickly because he's aware that Gent are just not paying attention to the situation. As he's throwing in the ball, you can see the two Gent players closest to Soufal are also, again, high-fiving, completely paying zero attention to what's happening. Obviously, Soufal is aware that there can be no offside at all from a throw-in. He's switched on, so is Bowen. He plays the ball brilliantly into the space. And their defence is completely all over the shop because they completely switched off. They completely lost their concentration. And the one time where we actually should show something, a little bit of incisiveness, a little bit of intent, we then obviously get a goal. And this was in the 95 plus 2 minutes into the game. Obviously, it was checked for offside. Obviously, Danny Ings wasn't offside, nor was Bowen. Bowen gets the ball, passes it across goal, and it's an absolute simple tapping for Danny Ings. Now, that kind of tapping is meat and drink for Danny Ings. It's just so simple. It's what Danny Ings was brought in to do. It's his type of kind of poacher kind of finish. And at that point, we would be happy. We probably didn't deserve to be 1-0 up, but we were 1-0 up, and we were probably thinking we're probably going to be good value for a win. We'll probably just get our way through. We hadn't done much to deserve that win, but ultimately we were in a very good and strong position. Then comes the second half. Again, we start off fairly well. We start off pretty quick, but then the game kind of petered out. Again, it was more the physical side. We wasn't really up for it. We didn't really chase the ball that often, or there wasn't much urgency in how we pressed, how we moved. And when you look at Gent's goal, it just epitomised just the lack of urgency, the lack of concentration, the just lack of everything at the moment with West Ham. We're just a kind of half and half team. There's never any real full commitment. And as I say, Ings was terrible in that first half, bar that goal. He was absolutely anonymous. And it was kind of pointed out, but it didn't really get commented on. Players like Ben Johnson, who was actually putting in a performance and actually trying to do his job, which he did fairly well for a majority of the game, was pulled over hot coals. Danny Ings, nothing said. Flynn Downs didn't do very much. He won a couple of tackles. I'd expect that. He ran around a bit. I'd expect that. But because he done those, which are the expected parts, it was praised. But he was pretty ineffective off the ball, pretty ineffective when in that attacking third. Now, it's not his strong suit, but again, as a player, you should be aware that if I go to this position, I'm going to pull this player towards me. But there's that lack of awareness, like the one of the opportunities that we pulled out. And when you look at this goal, again, it just shows that considering it's a player is talked about for his defensive acumen and his ability defensively, it's really poor. And it's not just him in this sequence as well. I know I'm calling a bit out here, but there are other players who are culpable for this goal. And it was really slow paced. And it's just terrible all round. There was so many mistakes, not only from decision making, but positionally. Now, again, get the ball. Now, in this situation, you would say that really Ben Johnson has to come over a bit more to Ogbonna. Soufal also would then migrate over as well. Declan Rice probably could be a bit more over as well onto that left-hand side, in which to pretty much cut out that channel or that pass into Auburn. Now, if Declan Rice is a little bit more to the left, what that then does, it means that they have to go play it back into that right-hand side. And we essentially stop this opportunity from ever happening. Obviously, again, probably could push up a little bit more, but we're trying to hold some semblance of a line. And because Declan Rice isn't over a little bit more, because Aged is not close enough to Auburn, they're able to play the ball into the feet of Auburn. Now, this is again where I talk around the problem with Downs. Downs is just marking nothing. He's standing in an irrelevant space. He's not close to his centre back, a centre midfielder. He's not aware of what could happen. He doesn't read the potential danger. In fact, he's just standing in space. Essentially, that's it. He's marking space, having no impact on the game, and not backing up his teammate in Declan Rice and coming across. It's a nice little 1-2, played obviously into Auburn. He then lays that ball off, as I say. Auburn, again, should be tighter to Auburn. He's gambled and anticipated that he's potentially going to try and spin and go into the channel rather than just getting close and then maybe asking Emerson to drop in. He doesn't do that. Obviously, Bonner's coming over and covering Kuipers, but Ben Johnson doesn't come across, and therefore nor does Soufal. So it's just a cluster of mistakes and positional problems that cause this. And because of Downs is in such a bad position, and because there's such a gap between him and Rice, they're able to get the ball. And as we say, look where he has the ball when he plays it into Auburn. When the ball is played, Declan Rice turns around and no one's there. Flynn Downs should have been in the position in which to come across to either slow the ball down to then allow people to get back into position, or to have won the ball. But in fact, when Declan Rice turns around, no one's there. There's a huge space, and he's able to run at least 10 to 15 yards to the edge of our area. And because he's able to do that, we're then in the problem where Aged now has a 2v1. Emerson hasn't dropped in. So Aged is in that point of, well, I either go to Kuipers or I go to Auburn, or I just sit in the middle. And he just kind of sits there. Doesn't really impact, affect, or do anything in this situation. Bonner has to come out. Obviously, he has to leave the player he was marking, which was Kuipers. He comes out. It's a nice pass, really well done from the Gent player by playing it through his legs. But again, Johnson, as he didn't come across, there's now that big gap between them. Had he been across, again, he's going to be in a position in which to block. Now, he blocked a good few opportunities in the first half and done fairly well. This time, his positioning wasn't good enough. And when the ball is played equipped, all he needs to do is a slight drop of his shoulder, move the ball to one side, and then shoot on goal, where, again, Areola probably should have done better. But it was just such an easy goal. And it was easy because players weren't doing their jobs. And people may not agree, but Downs is very culpable in that goal. Declan Rice, of pass, is probably pressing a lot harder and a lot faster. Again, there's no communication in the defense. That defense is not talking to each other and pulling each other across and working as a unit. what you could see a lot of last night was that is a defence who not only hasn't played together, it's a formation that they're not very clear on, and also from a pressing point of view, the way it was set up really didn't work. And whilst Downs did make a good recovery tackle late on in the game, I think around about 70th minute, for me, he didn't do enough. Wasn't good enough in the ball, didn't try and make any kind of influence in offensive positions when he was there. And despite a couple of good tackles, which again should be expected from a defensive midfielder, he was largely very ineffective, but gets away with it because it's Flynn Downs and because he supports West Ham. It's the only reason I can think of that he gets away with it, because quite frankly, it wasn't that great a performance. And that goal really highlighted to me as to why Flynn Downs should never be in the conversation about being a starter for West Ham. And those kind of situations, a player should be aware. And the reason I say this is because the moment when Paqueta came on for that final 16 minutes, there was a vast difference in what was happening. He defended with much more intensity. He ran after the ball. He would look to break up attacks. He would then look to drive with the ball. He also made incisive passes. One of the first things he did was a beautiful pass for Bowen in between the defence. Bowen tried to chip the goalkeeper and gets it completely wrong, and it harmlessly goes out. It had to be on. There is no excuse for him not getting that shot on target. At the absolute worst, he should be hitting the goalkeeper, but to miss as much as he did is not good enough. He's meant to be a goal scorer. He's meant to be a Premier League player. He should be doing better. He should be, in fact, lifting it over the goalkeeper, who was already about to go down, or at least trying to take it round the goalkeeper. It's probably one of those moments where Danny Ings is probably going to be in a much better position, or even Antonio. But it was really poor from him. And we didn't look in any way, shape or form really cohesive until really Paqueta came on in about the 76th minute, where we had a bit of pace. Obviously, Antonio came on for that. That also helped us out, try and get some sort of foothold. Didn't improve us on the ball necessarily or improve our chances, but what it did do, it meant that we pressured their back line more effectively. We were quicker to press with Antonio on the pitch. And when Paqueta came on again, we was far better in pressing. Now, had those two probably played at the start, we may be talking about a different result for West Ham, because they did make a difference. Antonio wasn't fantastic, but what he did do was his running and his willingness to press was applying some level of pressure on Gent, which meant they had to play more long balls, more kind of, low percentage types of passes, and actually have to play more on those first and second and third kind of ball kind of things, which we were getting more joy of once we had Paqueta, because even Rice had more urgency in the ball and moved the ball quicker. And it's one of those thinkings of, had he been on maybe 10, 15 minutes earlier, it may have been a different result, such as the point where right at the end where Paqueta gets the ball off of the centre-back's toes, and then it's a brilliant tackle by, I think, Piatowski. A fantastic tackle. Obviously, we were sent off initially before VAR got involved, but it was one of those examples of why you need sometimes those players to play. Now, obviously, you wanted to rest players because of Arsenal. We didn't see the likes of Cornet, whose pace could have been vital in that game. Again, could have rested Bowen for, obviously, the game this weekend coming. Didn't rest Bowen. Granted, Bowen, Soufal were probably our best players on the pitch for a majority of the game. Paqueta certainly was the best player when he came on the pitch. Everyone else was pretty steady without being that exciting, that good. To say Danny Ings, besides the goal, was completely anonymous. And that's becoming a very common trend with him as a lone striker. It's just not effective. It doesn't suit us, and we look not very good. Obviously, Lanzini was fairly poor as well. Didn't really do much in possession nor out of it. That the press, I don't think, helped us. Yes, Moyes made the point that they were a physical side and they looked to exert that on us. But a lot of that physical part of the game was the fact that they had urgency. They were willing to run and sprint and chase things down. We didn't have that same urgency. as they said in the BT coverage, we looked like a team that wasn't up for it. I think we went there with the wrong mentality, or at least the players had the wrong mentality and went out. When, again, I know I keep saying it, but when Paqueta came on, there was a bit more urgency in the team, and we saw then players play with a bit more impetus. By and large, it was poor, really poor. And there was a fantastic opportunity about the 83rd minute. We win the ball. Johnson makes a terrible decision. Rather than playing it into Soufal, I think he's trying to chip it over the top for Declan Rice and Bowen, who are both looking to get in behind, but just ends up being a terrible, terrible pass, which is one of the things that he's been beaten with as a stick. Besides the fact that for a majority of the game, statistically, which people will not like, is that he won a majority of his duels. He won a majority of his aerial ones. He was pretty secure in possession, but loose when it came to his long ball passing. One of those moments where you really just put your head down because it just marred what was relatively okay performance, especially when you compare it to others as well. It's like no worse or no better than Aged and O'Connor, yet nothing said about their performances. And then they literally had a counter-attack, which they should have scored from. And we were very lucky not to have actually lost that game because they did have opportunities. I think they ended up led the game with about 20 shots on our goal to our 7 or 8. And bearing in mind, we are a Premier League team, and some of these players are maybe playing for their future next season, or at least meant to be playing for minutes on the pitch. There wasn't enough done. The likes of Cornet not getting any minutes, the likes of Fornals not coming on is probably fairly damning. Again, maybe making those substitutions a bit later than we should have also impacted on us. The lack of urgency or tempo in our play was very disappointing. And if we play like that again against Gent, they potentially are going to knock us out of the tournament, if we're being completely honest. If we play to that kind of level and that kind of intensity, then we are likely to go out because they are probably going to enjoy that at London Stadium. It is a bigger pitch, which means we play a high line, there's more room to run into. They're not necessarily going to exploit us in the flanks because they're not necessarily a wide team as we kind of show on the average positions. That is something we are going to have to take advantage of in the second leg, is the width at London Stadium. Now, the biggest disappointment about not winning this game and not winning this game comfortably, as I think many of our fans expected us to, which in my opinion was wrong, to play down Gent as much as they did. If we can exploit those spaces and those wide areas and exploit the width, we can look to cause Gent quite a number of problems. But the biggest issue about not winning this game and not winning this game comfortably is the fact that we are playing Gent before the probably the biggest game of our season, which is Bournemouth. Now, Moyes is now left with a conundrum of, does he go for this game against Gent and play the likes of Paqueta, Rice and so on from the start and look to maybe sew it up early and then try and bring those guys off and so on? Or does he kind of stick with the same kind of team and the same kind of formation? I personally think we play the same kind of formation. We're asking for trouble. And again, if we play pretty much a full-strength team, it's likely to get us through Gent, but then what are the repercussions it's potentially going to have against Bournemouth, who are playing with a lot of energy, a lot of urgency? We need those players fresh, and the players fluff their lines. For me, I think the choice in how we set up tactically from Moyes was poor. There's a lack of understanding from the players as to what to do in certain situations. Now, people will say that's on the players. That's actually on the manager. If they don't know how to attack or to exploit spaces or what to do in certain situations, that's on the preparation, which is the manager and his coaching staff. What he doesn't have control over is the mentality and the willingness to run in games. That is on the players. And that, for me, at times was a bit of an embarrassment because those players, for a bunch of players that are apparently playing for their manager and playing for this team, playing for this badge, didn't operate or play like that. Some of them did, such as Soufal, such as Bowen. such as Paqueta. For me, those players were playing for the badge. You could argue they were playing for the manager, but they were playing for the badge and they're playing for the fans. The others looked like they were mainly going through the motions in this game. And again, I think there was just confusion as to what we were trying to do and how we were trying to achieve it. And Gent can probably feel a bit hard done by to only come away with a draw. As I say, they had a very good opportunity at the end, which could have made it 2-1. It probably wouldn't have been an unfair result for them. But if I want to try and be positive, and I'm going to try and end this positive, is that whilst we did have those wasted opportunities a bit against Gent, and they were wasted, we do have to also look at those positively and say that those moments can be worked on. We can review those opportunities and say, if we get in this situation next time, this is where you need to be. These are things that we could have worked on as a team and to make players aware of, this is where I need you to be in this situation. This is what you need to do in which to turn what was a wasted opportunity into a golden opportunity where we should be ultimately, scoring or at least having a very good opportunity on goal. We are still in the tie. It is still 1-1. We do have an away goal. So if we go with the right mentality, we should beat Gent. We do have the quality. We showed that in that last 15 to 16 minutes. We were coming back into that game and we were looking probably the more threatening, bar them in transition and just with kind of trying to play the ball over our back line. We were looking probably the more threatening without ever being really threatening in the final third. We had much better intensity. So if we play with good pace, good urgency, operate with width, we should and could beat Gent and be far more comfortable. There's every chance that in front of their fans, the Gent team played well beyond their means. I don't think they did. I think they are a good team and they were vastly underestimated, not only by our players, but I also think within our fan base, rightly or wrongly. And if we play with the right intensity, we should be able to get past Gent. As I say, those wasted opportunities came in that first half predominantly. And if we take one or two of those in the next game, or we make one or two different decisions, we could be 1 or 2 up in the first half if we play better against them in that second leg. And if we are 1 or 2 up, I don't then see us potentially losing that game or going out. But we have to take the next leg with, I think, a bit more respect than what we did this time round. We need to show some urgency. As I say, the biggest conundrum now is, do we go with a near enough fully full strength team to try and win the game early and to then obviously bring players off to rest for the Bournemouth game, or do we go for much of the same? Now, if we go for much of the same, I think Moyes is saying that the Premier League definitely is the higher priority. It could be viewed as he's trusting these players, but I think it would say that he's saying that what comes will comes. If we go through, we go through. If we go out, we go out. We gave it a good shot, but the Premier League is the priority. So, yeah, it'd be good to kind of get your guys' view on the game. Do you think it was as bad as it felt last night? Are you still feeling the pains of that game? Do you think we actually played better than what has been said you've kind of had some time to think about it? And are you confident for the next game? And what would you do? Would you play much the similar team so that we have a fresher side for Bournemouth, or would you be going all out to try and get this result over and done with early in the next leg so that we can then rest some of those players before the Bournemouth game? But yeah, guys, thanks for listening. If you do like this video, please do subscribe. We also have our Twitter as well, so please do follow us on Twitter as well. We do regular posts, regular tweets and so on Twitter around players and so on and so forth. Again, if you do like this, please do subscribe. It does really help us. We've just hit 500 subscribers, so thank you very much. Really appreciate it. It's a great milestone we've been working towards for a while, so we really appreciate everyone who follows us, everyone who watches our videos. But Until next time, guys, which will most likely be tomorrow, where we put out our review for the dreaded Arsenal game. Again, everyone be safe, and we'll speak to you again soon. And the last thing to say is, come on, you Irons.